Hello, everyone. Welcome to the GLORIO Chat, the best anime podcast on the internet. We have reached the end of another anime season. Winter 2021 is over.
We somehow made it.
We've made it. I feel like generally this is a season that started pretty strong and did not end so great.
No, you compare this to, the magical winter of 2020. And
yeah,
I think there were more shows this season, but that doesn't always necessarily mean better
shows. It just
shows.
feels like, to varying degrees, every show I was watching dipped in quality in the second half in some capacity.
It breaks my heart to say, but I think I would actually say that's the case for almost everything on this list in some regard.
Yeah, but, well, we were just talking about next season before this, so plenty to look forward to there, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But
you can listen to
we'll
our
talk
last
about that.
podcast where
It seemed like it was a mere 2 weeks ago where we were talking about the next season.
Yes. So we'll have more to say about that on the next episode. But this episode is our last opportunity to talk about some of these shows, even though some of them haven't finished yet, apparently. But we'll get into that.
Yep.
So yeah, let's get into it. But first, let me introduce everybody. I'm Jel. I am joined by Iro.
I'm still here. Not dead yet.
Still with us. I am joined by G.
What's good, everybody?
And we're joined by Artemis.
Hey, good to be here.
All right. So, yeah, let's dive into these shows. The ones we've been talking about.
Garbage.
Yes, head first into the garbage. I hope people know that running gag at this point. But, let's see. Yeah, I mean, these are pretty much the ones we've been covering all season, and we're just going to get our final takes here on them. And
speak or forever hold your silence.
Yes.
Officially, you're not allowed to talk about any of this anime ever again after this podcast.
empty the
Some
tank
of them
now.
I don't
Sorry,
think I would
there's-
want to.
It's just
Yes.
literally like 12 more episodes of Black Arrow, man.
Yes, I know.
All right, so let's start with whatever happened to the Promised Neverland season 2. This is
investigating the mystery of the murder of one the Promised Neverland.
this is caused
This is the worst show.
this has caused quite a stir.
The
Yes.
worst.
look.
The worst show.
I don't know.
The
Right.
assassination of
So
the
far
Promised
this-
Neverland by the coward Cloverworks.
I recall you saying something similar about one Japan Sinks. How would you say the two compare?
Okay, well, Japan Sinks was terrible most of the way through, so I let me rephrase that. This is the most disappointing show
Okay.
that I've
Christ.
seen probably over the last year.
Fair.
Yeah, I mean, it's caused quite a stir. Like, we
Complete
may have a
fucking mess.
reputation for hating anime around here,
Uh-huh.
but even outside of our circle, this has pretty much been universally
Oh, when I
panned.
saw that the Promised
as-
Neverland was trending on Twitter, I knew it was for
Yes.
all the wrong reasons.
I will, before we get into the details, I will point out Cloverworks did, 3 or 4 shows this
They
season?
were
and
doing Promised Neverland, Horimiya, and Wonder Egg Priority.
And they've all had issues on the back end here, as they've been struggling with production issues. But
Some more than others.
yes, some more than others. But
The number of studios I would trust to handle more than 2 shows in a single season, I think I could count on like one
I
hand.
mean, it's like the Giants who have 5 teams, right?
Right, it's like Sunrise.
Toei
Right.
and Bones. Like,
Yeah, basically.
which, for all intents and purposes, might as well be like 5 studios,
Yes.
right?
yeah.
Yeah. So why don't you guys tell me what happened?
Artemis,
was the-
Artemis, you are the one who did not read the manga, correct? So
I did not.
shoot your shot.
I was just so confused. I don't understand how this happened. Like, it's very, very clear to me that they skipped over like, a lot of material to get from point A to point fucking triangle. I don't know. Like, it wasn't even in the same alphabet system anymore. It
Right.
was just,
Yeah.
and the characters just, I just have so many problems. I don't even know where to start, you guys.
Uh-huh.
So
I
yeah, I
guess-
mean, I heard the main problem seemed to be skipping a whole lot of material, but I guess even the conclusion that they came at was not good.
Right. I wasn't confused by the base plot. Like, I get where it went, like in terms of what happened. So it wasn't that I was confused as to what I was watching on screen. I was confused as to, even if they had to skip a whole bunch of plot, does that mean you also have to change every person's character, like, on a dime?
Right.
Because you have these like kind of the anti-hero guys, like on the other team was Norman, who were like certifiably insane. And then the next episode, they're like, you're right, we should definitely fight on your guys' side now.
You've convinced us with your luck and pluck,
with
Emma.
your sincerity,
Well,
and the power of friendship, I guess.
Let's just say that, maybe the manga takes a couple more chapters to set that up, but it's not far removed from that. So
Right.
And then the bad guys are
Just,
like Mama
lay down and roll over.
is suddenly, because Emma's like, Mama, actually we love you after all this time and we've forgiven you, and now that we're all kind of fighting for the same thing, sort of, we can all just get along now, right? And they're all like, yeah, we can, sounds good. Huh?
Cool.
what
It's
if I told you that?
fucking mess.
So
It's not that different from how it happens in the manga.
Okay,
I guess
but
that was
what
my
if
big
Mama
question.
survived and got to go to the human world with all of the kids
Wait, really?
and becomes a hippie and starts playing the acoustic guitar in the park?
Yeah, there was a whole montage of happy things.
Seeing as we're not worried about spoilers here, I feel like one of the thematic points of Mama's fate in the manga is specifically it doesn't matter how good your intentions are, you were still an accomplice to
Your crimes cannot be forgiven.
a deeply monstrous system.
Right,
And-
I can't get behind the morality lesson of this at all. I just can't do it.
Right.
I'm as someone who didn't watch the anime but read the manga to completion. I'm really I guess I'm really really interested, I guess, in just this is so much more fascinating to me than the manga itself in so many regards, because as Iro and I sometimes alluded to last year, that that the Promised Neverland, for better or worse, never really quite hits the same highs as its original debut arc ever again. But that there were still some legitimately interesting, fun moments down the line, and so it's really curious that it seems like the anime was dogmatically driven to getting to the end point at all costs, regardless of the cohesion of the narrative or the pacing or the character development. It's almost to the degree of I hate to say it, but why did this anime even happen if this is how they were going to do it?
Yeah.
It's not only that they skipped 60% of the story, it's that they took what would have been season 3 or 4 and cut it in half. You have multiple plot threads all coming together for the climax, but what if we picked one of those and then took the rest of them and stuck them into a 3-minute montage at the end?
Which, by the way, was that New York? Did I just did they
it
just
was.
transport themselves to New York, modern day New York City?
Kinda, yeah.
Yeah, the Promised Neverland world building starts to maybe collapse under its own weight towards the end there.
Right, but the whole jump into fucking demon society or whatever was built up over a much longer period of time in the manga, to the point where it's not that just that they tear down the farms or whatever, it's that they do have to destroy those at the top of a demon society and fight the JRPG final boss queen who morphs into a creature. I'm not saying it was all good, but what I'm saying is it's crazy to me that they would excise all of it from the plot and then put in this montage that's And we did all that off screen. Later.
Yeah, that's really. I mean,
like,
it's
why? No.
like, you know, there's another show on this list later where I think Iro and I are gonna like very much like wring our hands over like the very specific minutiae of how its finale maybe was somewhat like flubbed by its lack of screen time. But compared to The Promised Neverland, that's nothing. Like, it sounds like this show was just like given a legitimately impossible task. Like, this is not a case of like, oh, you could have given them more money or like a better studio could have like, no, I don't know any studio who could figure out the task of adapting like 3 seasons worth of material into like one like what 12 13 episode arc. Like, that's insane. It's almost like it was set up to fail from the start.
I think so. And and
I see no path out.
I laughed. Like, the montage started happening. They all get welcomed as immigrants, as you do.
Yes.
When you come to America.
Yeah, the gate opens literally on like Liberty Island or something.
And a guy with like, I don't remember what he looked like. I think he had a beard and maybe a hat. Like, the mayor of New York City maybe extending his hand and welcome to these poor immigrants coming from a demon kingdom.
Who is that? Is that Cuomo? Or is that who's? No, that's
I don't know. I might be misremembering, but
I'm trying to think who's the current.
I just laughed. It was supposed to be a really touching moment, and I just couldn't.
Who's it? It's not de Blasio, is it?
Completely insane. What a mess.
Ira, what so how much did they actually change versus aside from cramming things in? Like you said, they changed Mama's fate in the anime. Like, did
she
they
survives instead of dying is basically it.
Right.
Like, she in the manga she also like turns tail and helps the kids, but also she must give her life for her crimes, basically. Right. But anime is just like, well, we forgive you.
It was so fast too. They and everyone seemed to be on board with this. Like, even the people they hadn't spoken to were like, "Yeah, that sounds legit."
It's interesting because like these are actually very common criticisms of the manga itself. Even with all of the time and pacing, even with the time to properly set up these arcs, people do have strong criticisms for, like, for example, Emma's like turn to pacifism, right? I mean, it fits her character, and you know, it is well set up, but people do criticize it because of like not her pacifism itself,
the scale of the atrocities,
but much more like how the simplicity in which she solves the world's problems through like love and sincerity, including the stuff with like Mama, right? Like, because many of like Emma's newfound allies are people who grew up like in the bad farms, right? Like, who have every reason to like hold nothing but like murderous contempt for the system. And even in the manga, the common criticism is like Emma's just like, no, through the power of love we can overcome, and everybody was just like, okay.
Yeah.
And so that's already a problem in the manga, where they had the time to, you know, to at least admittedly set up that character arc. Imagining that happening in the anime in the span of like what, like an episode, like half an episode.
It wasn't even maybe 5 minutes. Honestly, it was so fast.
Completely ridiculous.
Wow,
that's wild.
Like,
I don't mind. I don't really care about Emma's pacifism. Like, whatever. Like, it fits with her character. It's believable in terms of who she is as she's been introduced to us. But the fact that everyone else is immediately on board with this is crazy to me. Like, absolutely insane.
Well, this whole thing just sounds like horrible mismanagement.
Complete train wreck. Like,
you know, they probably said, we're gonna make an anime whether you like it or not, and you have one more season, and that's all you get. Make it happen.
I feel like I've scarcely seen something collapse this hard. Like,
I wouldn't have cared if the first season hadn't been as good as it was.
Right.
Because Mama was such a good villain, like one of the best villains I had seen in a long time.
Yeah.
And the suspense was so well manufactured that coming into the second season was a heavy blow for me.
Yeah.
Hence my disappointment.
I think, man, I can't even actually get into this because this is getting into things that I cannot talk about another show on this list. But I think that for better or worse, right, it's like you often see this in a lot of, not just anime, but a lot of fiction in general, where like the first villain is often the best villain because they're the villain that the author originally wrote the entire conflict around.
Right.
And then once that's over and it gets popular and they want it to keep going, your author is suddenly forced to pivot from there. And I think that is how you end up with like these much more simplistic conflicts, right? Like, where instead of like the kind of like soft power that Mama represented, you start ending up with, it becomes shonen, right? Like you have like, demon power levels and such, right?
I remember like Mama breaking Emma's leg is like
a huge
completely insane escalation.
Right,
for the
like,
point. That's incredible. And now we have Faust from Guilty Gear with a paper bag over his head and double katanas, slicing up demons, and it's like I don't care.
It doesn't matter, right? Because it's like you become desensitized to it, right? Compared to like the kind of conflicts that happened in season 1.
Right. Well, at the end of the day, to just come back to, they should have ended the story when they escape, and we would have had
once you realize society is a prison.
Yeah.
Oh,
all right.
Well,
all right.
pour one out for the Promised Neverland.
Yeah.
Truly fascinating.
So. Yeah.
Happenstance, but oof.
Sequel. They have to deal with filling out forms for a green card.
Oh, crap.
That'll take a whole nother season. Right?
Well, maybe we'll get like, hey, maybe they'll do like Shaman King will get the Promised Neverland Brotherhood in like 10 years.
Motherhood. No.
The Promised Land. Yes.
All right. Let's move on, and let's talk about where we left off on Cells at Work, Code Black specifically. G, did you wrap this one up?
Yeah.
I hope, because I think you're the one watching.
Yeah,
this.
no, I'm the only one who watched it. I know, but it was good. I think that like at this point, like despite I voiced my concerns about this show early on, right, about it being the gorier, sexier, edgier spinoff, but like at the end of the day, it's like a genuinely good take on the Cells at Work like format. Like in fact, I would say like even without that caveat, it's a genuinely like decent piece of fiction in general. Like I actually really liked it by the end, and it kind of is for the reasons I stated before, where unlike the original Cells at Work, which is mostly edutainment, and Code Black is still that in some regards, right? But it has stakes. It had like real legitimate stakes that like they actually did a good job of setting up. The finale of Code Black is it's kind of what we all suspected. The body dies.
Oh.
Well, the heart stops.
Well, we were suspecting COVID for the final episode, but
I think that is like in the manga.
I've heard of prior to this airing, I'd heard that Code Black had a climactic heart attack chapter, so I've kind of figured that's like all I had heard, and so I figured that would be the climax of the anime.
The body. So yeah, I think that's a more appropriate climax than doing something that's just like shooting for the headlines.
Yeah.
right.
But yeah, so the body has a heart attack. The heart legitimately stops, and the body begins to slowly, go through necrosis, and it's actually a really fascinating like climax because it is suddenly about. It becomes very
apocalypse is like
kind of. It becomes a very existentialist. Like the cells start to come to terms with like the end of times, right? Like about what do you do when it's too late, right? Like there is really nothing left that the body can do to stop this. Like, and so it is about coming to terms with. Your inevitable demise.
Do they come to? Is it like a kind of a Titanic moment where everyone's just freaking the hell out?
Yeah, it is. It is kind of like the Titanic. Yeah, like you get to see different cells react. Some panic, some like go into overdrive. Right, some like work 3 times harder because it's like, well, that's just like what those cells are like.
This is how I cope.
Right. It's basically it's how people cope with trauma, and it's like. Even if it weren't about like the caveat of being inside a human body, it's a legitimately like compelling piece of like apocalyptic fiction. And I think that like the thing I actually really and it's so this may seem like a bit of a cop out, but like at the end the body does manage to pull through because like the 1 in 100 chance CPR actually manages to work, and or at least keep the heart running long enough for someone to get an AED. And it is very interesting to see, like, these from the perspective of the cells, right? Like, they see the ribs cracking, and they see, like, jolts of electricity flowing through the body, which is rather unpleasant in some regards. But I do think that it's actually... I don't actually mind it. I wouldn't call it, like, a cop-out because, like, I haven't really mentioned it much, but one of the consistent themes in Cells at Work Code Black is that the body is actually pretty bad at like fending off a lot of things on its own, and that many of like
modern medicine,
our ability to survive is like founded on modern medicine. So like many of the conflicts are solved less by like the cells getting by on luck and pluck like they do in the original, and more like just holding out long enough for the human they live in to get medical treatment. Yeah. And it's kind of a fascinating take on it. So like the theme that I haven't really mentioned is that anytime like man-made like medicine enters the body, it is always
robots or something.
It is always portrayed as a mech, which is pretty fun.
That's pretty good.
And so like it's literally Drix. It's literally Drix from Osmosis Jones, right? Like the antibody like pills or whatever enter, and they're literally just Terminators with like arm cannons.
Yeah,
it's pretty good, but and so yeah, like the body does manage to survive, and like the body, you know, because of its near-death experience, right? You know, it's a little bit cliche, but has the classic like, oh shit, I almost died. I gotta turn this around, right? So it ends with the body being like healthy and like, you know, things are starting to get better, right? Like not everything's perfect, but like it's back on the road to recovery.
Did they lose like a lot of cells on the way? Like is there a moment where like half the cells just kind of
I mean,
disappear.
Not like explicitly, like, you know, in that regard, but I did mention it like last time we talked about the show. Like the main character's friend straight up dies. Like there are like people die permanently in this show, like named characters. So like, you know, they're not necessarily showing like all the cells like just dropping dead, but you know the fact that unlike the original Cells at Work, like they're willing to actually kill on-screen characters to like really communicate to you like this body's in a bad way, is pretty well done. The interesting thing though about the finale is the body's healthy. They say that like, hey, it turns out our body's like starting to like even get into exercise, and like, you know, they're just trying to do better. Except this culminates in this body with its newfound lease on life and trying to turn itself around has also gotten into donating their blood. And so,
wow, this really is Ozzy and Drix.
So the end of the show, literally the last 2 minutes, is some of the main cast getting sucked up into a syringe and inserted into a new, even more unhealthy body.
Oh,
that is an even worse condition.
That's really messed up
than the original.
That's really,
and the protagonist just like fucking collapses on their knees and is just like, when will this end?
What an really awful way to make the status quo, keep the status quo going.
And I was like, huh.
It's really dark.
Okay,
I respect it.
It's super dark.
I'm like kind of into it, but in the sense of like, yeah, it's a way to continue the status quo, but it's like, all right, man, like, you know, you felt like you still had some stories to tell about like a failing, dying body. I guess go for it.
Wow.
So I don't know if that's a confirmation of a season 2 or whatever, but I would say that like as a standalone spin-off of the Cells at Work concept, I think it works. Like I think the climax with the heart attack, it's well done. Like the main character, Red Blood Cell, has like a legitimate character arc through that show. Like he develops, he has an arc, unlike in the original, and so like I think even without the caveats, like I think it's a legitimately fun. It's a legitimately like good anime.
Yeah, I I don't know where they go from like basically death. So I don't know how they would even if they decide to continue the story or whatever. I don't know where else you go from there. But yeah, I mean, it sounds like a much more compelling piece of work than the main show, which is gonna obviously have much be much more, you know, lower highs and
right. I think
lows?
the thing
can I invent that term?
I don't know. Like I think the thing that makes Black work in general is just like it's not even necessarily the tone; it's the fact that it has stakes. Like that's what actually makes it work. Like, you know, I think some of the grimness works because again, like it very much does feel like an apocalyptic story. Like their world is dying, and there's like there's a great part where like it gets into like there's a great part like I think in like the penultimate episode that like gets into like what pain is, and like from the perspective of the cells, like it is portrayed as just like cells just like furiously, impotently, like just pounding their hands on the ground because like nothing they will do will save the world, and like they're crying and begging the body to do fucking something before they drop dead.
Of physical pain.
And they're like, this is pain, right? Like this is the body's like this is the body's like last like impotent way to try to convince the body to turn things around. And again, it's like it is very much the scared straight. It is very much the scared straight program of Cells at War, because then it's like, do you feel pain, motherfucker? This is your body. It's crying. Do something about it. You know,
man.
the body's dying, Cloud.
Yeah. Tell me you can't hear your body crying out in pain.
Right. No, it is literally, can't you hear your body? Like, it's literally, the narrator's almost like, can't you hear your body crying for you? Like, won't you do something about it? It's like,
well,
all right, I'll go jogging. I get it.
Yeah,
Jesus.
I got to go get more exercise, I guess.
I'll eat more vegetables, Cross.
All right.
Wait,
Well,
so
I'm glad one show on this list held up.
Sorry, Artemis, what?
is
the
it?
end.
I'm still like a little like, is it dark, or is it like black comedy dark? Like, is it presented as a comedy or not at all?
Not really. Like, there are parts of it that are comical, but like, it mostly plays the grimness pretty straight.
I see.
Which
Because I mean, describing it, that sounds pretty dark. Yeah.
I mean, like, the comedy probably comes from it being like
Absurd, like,
you know, yes, like this cell is represented as like a man in like a green jumpsuit, and watching him crying and pounding his fist against the table, the image is quite comical in some regards. But
in reality, these things have no consciousness.
yes.
Right. All right.
Well, yeah.
Like I said, I'm glad at least one show held up on this.
It did, you know,
mean,
I guess in
yeah.
hindsight, it actually did hold up to the end. So
I think
So.
our next one held up.
I think so too. In fact, I think it got better over time.
I have some things to say about this. So let's
Okay.
let's talk about Jujutsu Kaisen.
Okay.
I'll point out that for technical purposes, this whole thing they're calling season 1 now. So
Yeah. Yes.
while it is technically the second core, I guess it's meant to be one whole block for the first 24 episodes or whatever. And when we last touched base, I had marathoned through the first half of it, and I had made it up to the baseball episode since we last spoke. And I was with you guys that up to that point, season 2 was great, and I'm not going to say the rest of the second half of it was bad, but I was kind of less into that.
It's,
Sure,
I mean,
yeah.
understandable. I think it is this is the nature of an adaptation, right? Like, it's. I'm sure they would love to have ended the second core on like a proper
On the
big
baseball
climax,
but
but I think it's just
Yeah.
one of those things of well, this is the arc that happens next in the manga, so I guess we just have to.
Because it's not really it's a little anticlimactic,
right.
And also, I was like, I'm kind of realizing that while I really like the protagonists in this show, the villains are kind of lame. Would you
Yes.
guys?
Yeah, I would
It's
agree
fun,
with
that.
right? It's an interesting. It's a bit of an unfortunate situation where yes, the villains are kind of the weakest part of the show at the moment.
Yeah, and like I like the protagonists a lot, which that's what's really kind of carrying it for me, is because I like them and their relationships, and I think they're all very good. But just what they're fighting is not comparable.
Yeah.
So it kind of made
way
sense to me
when
that
they were fighting each other, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
like that was kind of the best part, was when they were kind of fighting each other in their little tournament thing or whatever.
Right. It was because it was actually characters you liked to see.
Right.
Whereas the villains, and I mean, I think Aaron and I are probably willing to give Jujutsu Kaisen more seasons to give those villains time to come into their own, but it very much does sort of feel ironically, a little bit like the problem My Hero Academia eventually fell into, where the main cast was infinitely more interesting than the villains, and then My Hero Academia had to start playing catch up to make the villains more interesting, and I'm curious if Jujutsu Kaisen will end up in a similar situation,
Right.
but. For now, though, wow!
I mean,
Sunhope
I'm
Park
still
and-
kind of riding high on that finale just for
Yo,
that
fucking-
sequence. of them beating the shit out of
Yeah, like fucking
That was
like,
very yes.
that like back-to-back turnaround, like
Yeah, the
Nobara
final-
is like the baddest fucking bitch I ever seen.
Yeah.
Like fucking slamming these sharp, huge nails into her own hand to basically play chicken with the villain. Like, who's gonna who's gonna drop first, me or you?
I did love that final bit, but again, we're kind of riding on the strength of how cool the
the
heroes are, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't even like the villains were like nobodies, right? Like,
right, yeah, right. Like I don't care about this weird Bara guy, but
right, that just kind of appeared this episode. Like they do have like the main villain guys that have been just kind of hanging out in the background all season, but like I don't really care much about them either. But yeah, but like this one, it just kind of ended with. But yeah, that fight was great. Pretty
It was a
cool
good fight, man. Sung-ho Park is one of the premier action directors in the industry right now, and I don't know. I think you have a point, Jel, but I think also like when it comes to like shonen, like I am willing to just go, wow, cool fight, as long as the characters like hit a certain baseline. Like I want to make it clear. I think Aaron and I have said before,
Yes.
right? If all we cared about was good fights, we would have watched God of High School to its finish, right? Like that show had cool fights, but like the difference is that Jujutsu
same
Kaisen
director
also
and
has
everything,
also has cool fights, but also characters we actually like
enjoy.
seeing. And I think that like, again, like I'm not, look, it's a show, it's shonen at the end of the day. It's battle shonen, right? Like we're not
Right.
You're always sort of grading on a certain curve with shonen, but I think that like it was like good enough, like genuine entertainment that like I think I largely walk away with pretty positive feelings about Jujutsu Kaisen.
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah. I still enjoyed it. So I'll just clarify. It's not like I felt like it was bad per se.
Mm-hmm.
I just did feel like it was a dip in, I don't even know quality, but my enjoyment level was dipping on this final arc.
Yeah.
And should this continue at the current pace, I don't know if I would keep watching a whole nother season or whatever, unless something
Right.
gets shaken up a little bit. Because it does fall into a lot of the standard battle shonen
It is what it is.
stuff.
It's a weekly
with
shonen
people
jump.
talking or
Yeah.
people sitting there talking about explaining
teach you my
in
technique.
fine
Yeah.
detail their powers and it just I like that's fine, but there's a reason why I normally don't watch shonen shows.
No, I think that's totally understandable.
So like you really got to like do something different or be like at the top of your game for me to stay invested in it, and I just felt like we were settling back into that mode a bit on the last arc. But I mean, as far as battle shonen go, though, I feel like this is definitely like got to be near the top of the list right now, right? Like as far as quality. So if
I mean,
if that's what you're into, this seems to be the one to watch. But
dude, fucking Sung-ho Park is so good at what he does. Like, it's kind of fucking ridiculous. Like,
yeah,
like look, everybody's talking about, oh, UFO table, this and that, Demon Slayer, It's like, yeah,
I mean,
don't
that
get me
stuff
wrong.
looks great, but it's a whole other type of.
But like Sung-ho Park's approach to action choreography is just like so fucking next level. Like the part of the last episode where like Yuji is like punching the fucking wall like in sequence, and like the dude is like rolling out of the way, or just like even the way that like Sung-ho Park portrays the classic like rapid punch, like as like. It's
the
funny,
aura.
Right? Because he actually, by the standards of aura, Yuji's aura is actually
slow as
fairly
shit.
slow,
Yeah.
but like it's portrayed with so much like mass, right? Like his
Right.
fists feel like trucks, like it's
Which
really
is
well
what it
done.
should be for his character and everything too. Like
Yeah, like fucking. And just like even like just the general like character animation, like every face Nobara makes in this episode
Crazy
was like a
face, like, yeah.
fucking delight.
Yeah, she's great.
Like just fucking, she knows she's like the baddest bitch in the room, and like she's so fucking like confident in that regard, like and just like oh man, just the fucking when she snaps and the fucking just dude fucking explodes. It's so good.
Yeah.
It's just like I don't
So-
know, man. I'm just so happy to see Sung-ho Park like do something that's like legitimately successful. Because look, we all loved Garo the Divine Flame. We loved Vanishing Line.
Right.
Like,
but
look,
that was probably not getting him paid.
right. Like, you know, we saw the BD sales on Garo. Like, we know that shit ain't that hot. But for him to like work on a thing that's like this
high
popular
profile,
and like, you know, people are like genuinely recognizing, oh, like actually, yeah, this dude is like
pull it off.
Yeah, he is the real fucking deal. It's cool. I'm happy for him.
Yeah. I'm just now like worried though that now he's stapled to this show, right? Like forever.
Yeah.
Free Sunho Park.
Yeah.
Right, because I mean, I assume he's directing the movie, right? So
I think so.
Like, yeah. So
but yeah,
you know,
still like
he might be. You know, it's one of those things of like, on the one hand, I'm happy he's getting work, but you know. Look, let's put it this way, Arrow. At least he is making Jujutsu Kaisen for the foreseeable future instead of more God of High School, okay?
Yeah,
like,
that's true.
Yeah.
Let's take what we can get here.
Yeah.
I think, did they officially confirm season 3? I mean, it's going to happen.
It said
not
to
yet,
continue, though.
But they
like,
said yes, and they announced the movie, which was the main, like, big thing.
Right. I don't see them not making a season 3 at some point.
Yeah.
Have either of you read the manga, or at least past?
Nope.
I read like 2 or 3 chapters past here, but I don't know if I will continue or not.
Yeah, I'm in a weird place with this. Like, it's I feel like it's
better to just ride it out.
My usual inclination,
anime, right?
yeah. My usual inclination is like to read the manga or the source material, but for this one, it's like I don't know. I think Sunho Park's just doing such a good job. I kind of just want to like.
I might go back and look at some of the stuff that was covered, just to like compare and see.
Sure. I think that I think that's fine. Yeah.
The reason I was asking about looking ahead, I'm kind of curious. You know, with my theories at the end of the last episode, they were talking about there possibly being a mole in the students, and I felt like the way it was all being presented, it might be Nobara, but I don't know if that's the theory I'm going to put out there for whenever season 3 inevitably happens. But that would be more interesting than fighting the patchwork guy or these other villains that they have floating around.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
maybe that's how you mix it up. I don't know. Because I mean, if they're saying it's a student and it's even if it's not Nobara, that would be more interesting to me than
I feel like I would hope that the mole is like an actual legitimate traitor. I just feel like the common like cop out in shonen is like, oh yeah, I was the mole, but I had to because my sister was being held hostage.
Right.
And I would much prefer
someone
like
who's just like, no, I actually fucking hate all of you.
Right. The traitor was actually just like, nah, dude, I'm just in it for like the money. I hate you fuckers. Like,
yeah.
we'll see. We'll see what
yeah.
We'll see what that show
Well,
does.
I kind of felt I didn't know if that was kind of what they were implying with when Yuji and Nobara have that conversation at the end, and she's like, "Yeah, I don't care that I'm killing these people or whatever." Like,
I think for that, I mean, we don't
that could
get
just
too
be her
deep into it,
personality too. But
I actually legitimately think that that's a part of her personality that's actually like really refreshing because she's basically saying, hey, like emotional labor is a real thing, and like I don't have the fucking heart to care about everyone in the world. Like it's not like a necessarily selfish sentiment. It's like a very like practical one, right? Like you can't have a bleeding heart for in this line of work, right? Like so she cares about the people she holds close to her, but like.
Yeah, I did think that was a much more interesting, nuanced take on that than the typical shonen save everybody, which Yuji is kind of like. Although even he's a little more pragmatic, I feel like, than your average meat-headed shonen protagonist.
Yeah,
but,
like he said sorry to that dude, but he still fucking blasted him. So.
Yeah, exactly. So, like I said, I feel like at the very least this is like the top of the shonen game right now, and I think at best it can be be even more than that. And
let's wait till the Chainsaw Man anime comes out.
Well,
but...
that hasn't happened yet. So,
put Sunho Park on Chainsaw Man.
Oh, dude, if Sunho Park was put on Chainsaw Man, I'd fucking lose my goddamn mind. Oh, shit.
I don't know anything about Chainsaw Man, but I hear you guys talk about it, and I can't imagine anything will be as crazy as what I imagine in my head. But
you'd be surprised.
Chainsaw Man more or less insane than BEASTARS.
Yeah, well, yeah. Speaking of insane things, let's move along to BEASTARS. We've wrapped up season 2. I mean, I guess I'll start as the one.
Yes, I need to know what you think as the person who hasn't read the manga.
Did
has
that
not
fight
read the
go
manga.
remotely how you expected?
Well, here's the thing. At this point, I don't think anything BEASTARS could do would really shock me. So I can't say I was like shocked at the ending of what happened, but I did not see that coming. No.
No, you didn't think Lewis would offer his own flesh and blood to give Lugosi the mid-battle power-up he needed?
Yeah, I thought. So I was thinking. I thought that's what the bugs were basically going to do, right? When they do the whole spiritual bug.
Oh, the bugs
commune
helped.
thing.
You know, they allowed Lugosi to dissolve into a
Cloud of
moths.
And he does his one magic bug punch somewhere in there. Oh God, I love BEASTARS. Yeah, no, I thought, you know, in my vacuum of not knowing what happens or anything, I thought the ending was great. I mean, obviously it leaves a lot still open. There's a lot of story left to tell here.
Yeah, you have no idea.
We still don't know what the BEASTAR is after 2 seasons.
This anime made zero effort to even hint at what the BEASTAR is.
I mean, the only thing we know is the person that finds the killer is supposed to be the next BEASTAR, right? That was the only thing they mentioned, and I don't know what that's going to mean for the future. But yeah, the last fight was pretty cool. Give the director a raise. It was very well directed and animated and everything. And obviously the big twist with Lewis coming back and his whole that whole ridiculous
I love it though.
that whole ridiculous sacrifice thing, and
free me from the chains of my past, Lugosi.
Right, yes. That was so ridiculous.
But also
so
it could never happen anywhere else.
Right,
No.
like the thing is for as much as we talk about how crazy that BEASTARS gets, like never in my mind could I scarcely imagine a more like thematically appropriate conclusion to this arc.
Oh, absolutely.
Like
yeah.
like as insane as consensual cannibalism sounds, like it is the thing that has to happen in this show that is predicated on the premise of a carnivore murdered and ate an herbivore on the school grounds. Like, the only way it could end is by another carnivore, like, consensually devouring the flesh of his herbivore friend to show the conviction of their relationship. It's a type of insanity that, like, on its face is like so completely absurd, but then like the more you think about it, the more you begrudgingly admit that actually the logic falls very neatly in place.
Absolutely.
In a way that it shouldn't.
They did the work to build up to this moment so that I mean, you say it without context, it sounds ridiculous, but you know, if you've been watching for the past 20 something episodes, it's like, yeah, that's pretty much
like the ideal kind of climax. It is surprising yet inevitable.
Yes, like as Riz said, Lugosi and Lewis's consensual carnivore, cannibalism like relationship is far stronger than Riz's non-consensual cannibalism relationship could ever hope to be.
Yeah, I mean that makes perfect sense. But yeah, so I obviously my only thing with it is there feels like there's a lot more story to tell, and who knows if we'll get a season 3. But other than that, I felt pretty good about it. But now we'll turn it over to you guys.
Right. I was saying for weeks that like, oh, it has like the final scene, like to set up the story going further has to be this, and it wasn't that at all.
Right.
Because they have. I think this was probably the right choice to adapt to season 2, but they've like systematically removed a lot of foreshadowing.
Yes, a lot of fairly significant plot points are actually missing from the anime, but those plot points only exist in service to future plot lines. So
right.
It's a bit of a difficult situation, and I'm like. So here's the thing. I want to make clear. I love BEASTARS, and I think season 2, like. I don't always get adaptations this good of my darling manga, but this one, I think, like, I was particularly blessed to have BEASTARS turn out as well as it did. But I have complex feelings because the last episode of season 2 contains, like...
No denouement.
this section contains like if I had a top 10 list of like my favorite moments in BEASTARS, this section alone has like 6 of them. Like,
Right.
I'm not even joking. Like, this is like my favorite single like stretch of plot in the entirety of BEASTARS.
Did they cut a lot of them? Is that
They sort of did,
Yeah.
and I think that for the couple that I really cared about, I think they actually did pretty well. But it is like unfortunate that I just kind of wish that BEASTARS had one more episode to give the denouement some time to breathe, because there are actually some pretty like that quick montage, like the Promised Neverland. BEASTARS season 2 also has a montage at its last episode, and that last episode, but that montage does actually contain some fairly important information that if they were going to do a season 2, they would kind of have to rewind the clock on some of that to like
we're
explain
talking
in
like
further detail.
we're talking like epilogue on the fight, basically.
Yeah, like when Lugosi gets arrested and like what happens to Lewis afterwards.
That did seem to go very quickly.
Yeah,
now that you're mentioning it,
I think that for the sake of the plot, it made the right cuts, but I do think it is like a little unfortunate the way it went, because like again, it's like these aren't all necessarily big things, but it's like there are things that are actually fairly important to like what BEASTARS is going forward. Like, for example, I'll dangle this one in front of everybody who hasn't read the manga. The anime has not made any mention of Lugosi's grandfather yet.
Right.
Lugosi has family.
Yeah. He has
specifically
mentioned his grandfather once or twice. But,
yes, he has a grandpa who nobody has seen in the anime yet, but let me tell you,
man, that guy's
he is
great.
an important character, and the moment you see him is in and of itself would be confusing to you. And
God.
do you think they're just planning on not having another season, like just in case?
I think it's,
so this is
yeah.
Go ahead, Hiro.
I think that might be the case. What?
Yes, is that, for example, yes, a character like Lugosi's grandpa, who actually would have shown up by now in the manga, the reason you cut him is because he's only important if you're going to adapt later parts of the story. But if you aren't, then he's kind of just an extraneous bit of character that doesn't need to be there. Similarly, Jack. Remember Jack?
Yeah.
Lugosi's friend, the dog?
Yep.
Pretty minor character, right? He's just like, he's like Lugosi's normal friend. How about you think, like, maybe an extra 30 seconds about a world inhabited by humanoid beast people. What's a dog? What's a dog in a world where everybody is an animal person?
It's a good question.
Okay.
One thing I did notice, and this is probably not relevant to anything that you're mentioning, but I did find it amusing that like Lugosi rooms with like the regular dogs, even though he's like, Mr. Big Bad Wolf, and they were all basically like, every time we see them, they're basically like the nerds playing video games back home, but I don't think that has anything to do with anything. That's the only thing I can think of that it. Also, Jack did get a pretty big speech this season.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
yes, I love Jack's speech towards the beginning. Right? Yes,
so I would not be surprised if it's more involved.
Jack is a literal good boy, and
yeah.
I wish he got a little bit more screen time, because there's some good moments between him and Lugosi that is lost in the anime. But despite all that, I do want to give shout-outs to... I have purposely not made any mention of this in the podcast, because bringing attention to it would be in and of itself a spoiler. But I really want to give a shout-out to the ending sequence of Season 2 of BEASTARS.
Right.
The
credits sequence.
The credits sequence.
They've been basically foreshadowing...
Yes,
what's
so
going to happen at the end. The whole time,
I could not say anything about this this ED, because that would bring attention to it. But the moment I saw the ED for season 2 and realized what the subject matter of it was, I instantly knew in my heart of hearts, these people understand. They actually legitimately understand what is like. It's a minor point, but actually one of the most like important relationships in this entire season is, and it's the relationship between Ibuki and Lewis. And
Man,
I-
it was really good.
I really like Ibuki and Luz's relationship is actually one of my favorite parts of Beastars. Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't necessarily get that much screen time even in the manga, but like, you know, the anime I think does a decent job of trying to like imply that like in many ways like Ibuki is basically the father that Lewis never had, right? Like
Right.
this sort of like surrogate father figure,
Lion
but
dad,
also
as we've been referring
yeah,
to.
his lion dad, but also like
Yeah.
this undeniable tension that exists between them that like of course you can read as like the relationship between our herbivore and carnivore, but also like
It's a real weird situation.
yeah, but like even on a grander level, like again, I think the thing that makes Beastars good is it's not just one-to-one like, you know, metaphors for social constructs, but
Right.
like
It's its own
there's a lot-
weird,
Right, but-
multifaceted.
yeah, but at the same time I think there's a lot to be found in the reading of Ibuki as sort of like he's an older male that was raised in a pretty toxic environment to become a pretty toxic male figure, right? Like he
Yeah.
was raised on violence to become violent, right? He is a lion, you know, his last flashback about like you're a lion,
You have to be the king of beasts. You have to
Right.
assert your strength at all times.
yeah, you gotta act one, right? I mean, how much does that sound uncomfortably like you're a man, aren't you, boy? You gotta act like a real man.
Right.
And like what that means is that Ibuki, like the real tragedy of his relationship is like, you know, again, I think like, you know, as a parent-son sort of relationship, I think Ibuki generally loves Lewis, but he can't express it. He doesn't know how because
Right.
all he's ever known is like carnivore showmanship and violence, and so he loves his dear son, but he doesn't know how to tell him to stay, and so all he knows how to do is lash out with violence, and
Yep.
it's a really wonderful tragedy, and
Beastars fighting toxic masculinity.
right, it's like, you know, like it's like it's tragic, right? Like and like Lewis himself, he doesn't know how to express it back, right? Because at the end of the day, he is scared of Ibuki, right? Like when Ibuki
Right.
like starts to threaten him, he is legitimately scared. He realizes he can't appeal to like through love anymore because Ibuki doesn't understand that language. And of course in the show itself it's like it's because he's a carnivore, right? Carnivore culture doesn't understand it, but like there's multiple levels you can read it on.
Yeah.
Right.
And when the last episode opens with
Yeah.
ED, it actually fucked me up pretty good. I was like, oh my god, they know, like,
Yeah.
they know.
Yeah.
And I would say to anybody who's watched the anime to look up the music video
Right.
For,
the
Yeah,
full
the full
version.
right, the full version.
of the Beastars ED, because it is like one of the most like beautifully tragic things I've watched in a while. Like it legitimately super fucked
Yeah.
me up.
As someone who did not know anything about where that ED was going, and then when they open up the episode with that, I was like, oh,
Yes, they're in the car, right?
that's what this
It
was
all-
about.
It all comes together, right? Like me and Eero just like fucking sitting on our hands
shit,
here,
yeah.
like since fucking episode 1, being like, oh my god, they're in the car.
Yeah, that was pretty great. That was a pretty great reveal.
It's really good, and yeah, I just want to give shout outs to it because like
No, definitely. That's
in a
important
weird
part
way, like in
of
a
it.
weird way, the ED actually does more work
Then the
to,
text,
like,
yeah.
to give emotional context to their relationship than even like their actual scenes on screen does, and I
Right.
think
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
really well done.
I think if you're really paying attention to their scenes, you get that vibe from it. But it's right. I mean, it's not even like they get a lot of screen time to begin with, so you have to really
Right.
kind of read into it a bit, and that just hammers it home.
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. Well,
Beastars,
I
huh?
guess the big question is, like you said, were they just prepping to not have a season 3? Because I would be real disappointed if we don't.
It's hard to say. Like I think
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember. So when season 1 ended, they did announce season 2,
Had a
right?
straight to be continued season 2.
They did not do that for this season,
Right.
and
Yeah.
so
And like they have put there were a couple scenes in like episode like 11 or something that had cameos of future characters.
yes.
Right.
So like, but it's hard to tell. Like, is that just like a fun Easter egg, or is that actually an indication of things to come? And I don't know. It's hard to say. Like, I would really hope that Beastars would get a season 3, but also like if you put a gun to my head and said, "Hey, you have to pick a place for Beastars to end,"
It's here. Yeah.
It would be here. Like, we didn't even get into it, so I do want to. I know I'm real scatterbrained on BEASTARS here, but I do love it. So I do want to also give another shout out to Riz. I think Riz is a fantastic villain. Like, I think that his relationship with Lugosi towards the end there is like deeply fascinating, and like, like it's cliche that Riz is basically Lugosi's dark mirror, but like I think they just do such a good job with Riz's characterization, right? Just the ability for him to like turn from like button-eyed teddy bear mode to like
right.
Fucking I'm going to like rip and tear you to pieces mode, like on a dime. Like, it's so good. Like it means that like even when he's like in teddy bear mode, like there's just like this constant tension of implied violence in his actions.
When they have that fight in the bath and like the cleaning lady shows up
and he just like instantly switches.
Just instantly swaps back over to teddy bear mode. He's like, "Oh, we'll be out in a minute," and then swaps back to
right. Just like the moment when like Lugosi and like Riz are like, "Well, guess we gotta clean up and we're gonna walk away from each other," and they simultaneously decide, "No, I fucking hate you too much to walk away."
Yeah,
it's really well done.
All right, well, we'll do whatever rituals we need to do to summon a third season on that, I guess. And let's move along and talk about Horimiya.
Yeah. That apparently is not over, even though
yes,
by all
Iro and I were
all
convinced.
Signs of yesterday's episode pointed to it's the last episode.
Yep, but apparently there will be an episode 13.
Don't know why.
Kind of hard. I don't know. I don't know if they're gonna time skip or what or something. But the ending of episode 12 seemed fairly definitive, or a fairly definitive place to end. But overall, this is another one. The second half of it really felt like a decline for me on this show.
It wasn't. I wouldn't call it a sharp decline. It just wasn't quite there.
I think adapting the Horimiya, the Hori likes to be abused thing is
that was a little
decision
weird
to adapt. I don't know.
The whole Hori begging to be slapped was a little weird. To quote Miyamura literally from the show, I don't want to kink shame, but
but is this okay? And I don't know. I'm not really comfortable.
I feel like they
it.
spent too much time on it. Let's put it that way.
I remain convinced, at least partially, that she did it just because she knew it would fuck with him a little bit and wanted to make him uncomfortable.
Yeah. I didn't think it was that. I just feel like maybe they put it too much on screen. But my thing was like, there's a couple things. First of all, we talked about the concern about, well, once Hori and Miyamura get up, what are we get together? What are we gonna do?
The answer is focus on these side characters.
And I was actually invested enough in the initial cast up to in the first half to where I was like, okay, I'm cool with that. Although I will say I didn't like I can't remember their names, the two of them getting together in the end, or did they get together? I don't know. Yes. But I still at least cared about them. My thing was like they introduced so many characters.
Yeah.
In the second half,
dumping,
that just like when they were doing the Christmas montage in the last episode,
and half the time you're like, who the hell is this?
I was like, I have no idea who these people are for like. And I don't know if that was just a matter of condensing too much of the manga into 6 episodes or something, but
there's a lot more just random slice of life stuff in the manga that they cut out because it's not important. I don't know.
And there was just like so many characters that like got maybe like 30 seconds of screen time that they felt like they had to like fit in there that didn't really need to be there, including like the one guy who was like the bully or something, and then they just flip him over to a good guy or something for some reason, and I'm like, I hate those plot lines. Like, some people are just assholes, and
I wouldn't have minded the plot line if it was a legitimate plot line, but it didn't really develop into one.
Yeah, they didn't go anywhere with it, right? Like, it was just like
it was like a 1 to 2 episode thing, right? They just never really
I guess he kind of feels bad about it, and they were gonna like talk about it, but then that never happens or something. I don't know, but
or they just they talked about it off screen, I guess. Like
yeah. There was just so many of those little bits that like just I felt like did not need to happen, but I don't know. It just felt like all over the place. Like if they had stayed focused on, because I mean we already had like 6-7 characters or something by the first half of the show, right? That was like plenty to work with, and yeah, they just spread themselves too thin. I felt a bit,
and then they started getting kind of progressively more dramatic. Whereas the point of me liking the show was that it wasn't overly dramatic.
Yeah, the whole bit with whatever those two were named, I forget. You just told me like literally 20 seconds ago. But yes, their story was a little more like conventional anime rom-com. Well, not even rom-com, but
it's
like
love
just
triangle
rom.
where they're maybe dating and Southern Girl likes him, and
and I didn't like them getting together. I didn't think that was a good match.
I don't like.
I did not ship them.
I don't really like it when any story feels the need to pair every single character up with another character. I just sometimes it's okay to just not be paired up romantically with someone. That's fine.
Like they even had to get the silly hot guy with the glasses who needs glasses with his sister, and like in one little bit, and I'm like, yeah, we just let them
just
live their lives.
It felt like they shoehorned a lot in that last.
But what if they had adapted the future chapter about the little brother dating his friend? Now we're talking.
Do we know the friend, or have that?
No, she showed up once in the last episode.
Oh, that okay, yeah, right.
Which, whatever. I just really like the little brother.
I assumed they would just kind of time skip maybe to the graduation ceremony or something.
Yeah, it is weird. Like it was a little weird to be reading the manga and they time skip like 10 years ahead or whatever, and like Hori and Miyamura do not even appear on screen during the time skip.
Are they mentioned? Like, are they married at this point?
They're mentioned, but
yeah, we get the
you don't get any concrete information.
The good old fashioned anime teenage marriage proposal at the end here,
which I didn't mind. I didn't mind that part because that felt like it
was appropriately awkward as opposed to dramatic. Like
it was just awkward and but still kind of casual. Like it felt a lot more like the first half of the show in terms of tone, and I was good with that.
How did it compare to Lugosi's marriage proposal?
Did not, just barely.
Very different.
Okay.
I don't think anything could be more awkward than that. But no, that was good. I mean, funny thing is once you go back to the main characters, the show's good again. But I don't know. It never got bad, but like I could feel my enthusiasm waning for it as we got more and more, pretty boys with different hair colors added.
Still don't think it was the right decision for Mimura to get a makeover.
They completely abandoned that whole thing, right? With his like piercings and tattoos and all that. He's just now.
He still wears his piercings around, but like no one really comments or cares about them.
Says anything about it anymore? Yeah. So I mean, overall. And I guess we'll see what happens in the last episode, but I can't imagine that changing my opinion on anything. I mean, overall, it's still a pretty solid show, I think. And if, as far as shows in this genre, it still does a lot of things that are very refreshing and fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just, I guess for me, it never really had any kind of like peak or climax to it.
Right.
And it just kind of.
Right. I enjoyed it, but am I going to remember this show a year from now? I don't know. But well, that's not true. I do think it did. As we said before, it did a lot of things that almost felt like they were intentionally busting up the anime rom-com concept.
But it was still at the end of the day like B tier Tanaka-kun, right?
Right. Yeah, it was the end result. Right.
Yeah, all right.
was just like great. So really, what we're saying is watch Tanaka-kun is Always Listless is the premiere version of this show. But this is still pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, what I'm assuming is not still pretty good. Has Back Arrow gotten better? It's been a long time since we talked about it.
Wait. Was it at one point good? I'm so confused.
Yikes.
Yeah, that's
I don't know
perhaps
if
the
it's gotten better,
question.
if I just have Stockholm syndrome now. Like, more things are happening. Is it better? I don't know. But stuff's going on. Like,
All right. I don't even remember where we left off. They
knows,
got to the
dude?
wall, right?
They're having a war. Like, the princess actually is a psycho split personality who declares war on fake China, and then they suck the evil out of her. But war is still happening, so we got to deal with that. And
All right.
and I feel like I like the show a lot more when it's focusing on like the fake China people, because then it kind of just comes a wuxia.
Yeah.
Like, so like when you have like
Okay,
old
okay.
emperor man like wrapping the lady in like his martial arts paper ribbons and be like, you need to show me the strength of your conviction, like,
And then tosses her into a river.
show me the power of your fear, and like tosses her into a river, you know, and she's just like, does my honor like force me to die here, or no, my conviction to murder that guy is even stronger than my fear.
It becomes very wuxia in
Yeah.
a way.
And I'm like, all right, this is way more interesting. The show's a lot more
But-
interesting whenever it's not about Back Arrow.
So that's the problem, right? Yes, is that like the latest episode, like I think Hiro and I were like, oh, okay, that was pretty good. Like they even did a gatai. The villains actually gatied first. Like
Yeah.
turns out, or quote unquote, the antagonists in this series invented the gatai, which is quite a twist for the formula. But yeah. Also, yes, it was a good episode because Back Arrow was almost entirely absent from it. And that sets a pretty bad precedent for your anime.
Yeah.
Um,
I should
yeah.
I should point out that this is continuing on
Yes.
to
Yes,
next season,
it
so
is,
we're only
yeah.
at the midpoint
Yep.
of
Are
the
you guys
story.
actually genuinely committed to watch the
At
second
this
one?
point, probably.
I mean, yeah, probably.
Yeah.
It's-
If we
it's
watch
there.
Gundam Build Divers, we can suffer through Back Arrow.
There's a lot of things we can watch.
Yeah, I know you guys have certainly watched worse things, but so let me just try to catch up. So they got to the wall, right? Is that plot line just out the window now, or
Kinda. So they got to the wall, and Back Arrow, being a Baka Yaro, tried to punch the wall and failed.
right?
And then they got picked up by Luto, not Europe. The not Europe kingdom.
Right, with the
And
princess.
they were like, "Hey, come back with us and meet our princess." And there's some drama, blah blah blah. But long story short is yes, they eventually all end up back at the kingdom to meet the princess. But oh no, the twist is the princess had an accident, had a
God.
bird shooting kite accident.
That's right.
When she was a child, and now she has an evil split personality. And suddenly, the what's her name? Amy Koshimi's the voice actress
Ami
who plays
Koshimi,
Ryuko.
yeah.
Suddenly, the Ryuko part of her voice acting career comes out a lot when the evil side comes out. But yes, then they managed to and yes, the evil side causes a geopolitical incident
Right.
on
so,
Skype.
so it becomes not Europe versus not China war.
Yeah.
The Emperor of China is great, though.
Yes, the Emperor of Not China is great. He's he looks like a frail old man, but then of course
Yeah, I
that
remember.
means-
I remember him. Yeah.
that means he is the strongest character in the anime.
Of
Right,
course.
he kicks everyone's ass without a mech. Like,
Right, he doesn't even use a mech.
Can
Not
I
yet, anyways.
Can I just side note? I forgot to mention this when we were talking about Jujutsu Kaisen, but when the principal pulls out his guitar,
Yeah, that was pretty good.
and you realize that was because in the OP
Yeah.
there's like one note where it just
Yes.
shows somebody strumming a guitar. You're like, oh, and it matches up with the music, so you think it's just like part of the video or something, and then you realize what that is. That the whole time it was referencing
Yeah.
the old man with his
It's pretty good.
Electric
Yes.
guitar.
guitar that he fights with. Did not see that one coming. But anyway,
Yeah.
not to get sidetracked too much.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just like, so yeah, the war's happening and they're fighting, and like, so, not China is invading, not Europe, and Back Arrow and the crew is sided up with, the kingdom and the princess, and like, they're trying to fight, but like,
Then
It-
giant Jabba the Hutt man appears.
oh god, right, yes, a Jabba the
Big
Hutt,
fat
like,
man.
like a humanoid version of hedonism bot from Futurama shows up,
I'm gonna see if I can
And,
find a
like,
picture of him. Cause
and like he's
Hedonism
like,
bought my favorite Futurama character, but
and
yes.
he's like really like, and I don't mean this like in a fat phobic way, but he's like really like gross and off-putting in the way he doesn't like fit the art style of the rest of the show. Like he's like just like so like ludicrously like corpulent. It's
It's a fine choice of words.
like and like he's implied to be like the true power behind the throne because he's pulling the strings and like
Of not Europe.
yeah, and he's like hiding in the shadows, and it's implied that he's also super powerful, like the
yes.
the emperor.
Yeah, that's
He's
right.
gonna be the final boss, probably, maybe.
Maybe.
But yeah, just like they just introduce like new plot points and characters, and it's like, I guess it could potentially build to like an interesting like setting, but also it's like I didn't really watch this show for an interesting setting. I was gonna watch this show because like, well, Nakashima's writing it, so there's probably gonna be like some cool dumb robot action, but even that has been in pretty short supply.
I guess that's my big question: is
in
like,
this
is
anime.
there a pathway to success left for Back Arrow, or is you think it's
a
just
pathway to like mediocrity, like I don't know.
Yeah, like, if they, like, inevitably break down the wall and reveal the true enemy and all of the people have to team up to fight it, like, I could see that, like, going in, like, sort of a fun direction, but I think in general, like, Back Arrow is just, like, it's really just been too, like, underwhelming, like,
Right.
across the board to...
I mean, it's hard to fix it when your main character is insufferable, I think, right? Like...
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you guys feel as strongly about how much I hated the character Back Arrow, but
I don't hate Back Arrow, but I also don't really
He's
feel
just a
anything for Back
non-entity.
Arrow.
Like I just don't
Yeah,
care
like-
about him at all.
Right, like, he is, like, the people like to joke that, like, oh, and Maishi just puts the same guy as his protagonist in every anime he makes, but, like, that same guy is pretty fun and likable and
Right.
charismatic. Like, yes, like, it's just the same, like, Kamina, boisterous meathead idiot, but it's fun and it works, whereas, like, Back Arrow is like a shoddy imitation of that archetype,
Yeah.
but doesn't actually understand, like, what makes that type of character fun to watch.
right.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, I mean, there's, you can be too dumb, and I think his whole, like, single-minded focus on getting past the wall and literally nothing else to the point where he can barely function as a human being was just, like, so stupid to me, but, yeah. Well, my thoughts and prayers for you guys as you carry on with the rest of this, the second half of this,
Yeah.
and I'll just make my bi-weekly plug to watch Gunsword instead.
We really should.
All right. Well, I guess we'll check back on that next
It's still going,
season,
so-
but let's move along to SK8 the Infinity, which I believe is also not finished.
Nope.
Still got one
It
more.
sure is not.
They had did they have a recap episode too?
They
'Cause
did.
Yeah.
We'll talk about
Yeah.
Wonder Egg had one, but so did I hear correctly? You guys said this kind of got better.
This episode, I think, was better than it's been for a while, but also it very much feels like a case of too little too late, in the sense of that, like, I think the latest episode is what I think many of us thought SK8 the Infinity was going to be like.
And yet I'm not convinced that it was meant that the comedy parts, or at least I'm not convinced that the parts I laughed at were meant to be laughed at.
Intentional? No. I mean, I think there's certainly. I mean, I think just to a certain extent they did make a big point of, like, Adam eating shit in some very comical ways in that episode.
Oh, I wasn't even talking about that.
Oh, you mean like the like?
I mean the episode before that where Adam, as a move, like a legit skating move, I guess.
My secret technique is I take my
bash
skateboard
a
and
dude
steps
with a
off
speed
his
bump.
skateboard. Right, steps
Yes.
off his skateboard and just
Clubs the dude in the
full on
face.
clubbers them with it.
Yeah.
I mean, Laura, this episode has him be like about to do the same thing, and he's like, I named this special move of hitting you in the
swing
fucking
kiss.
face with my skateboard, the like full love kiss or something, and then Catboy's like, no, to avoid that technique, you need to not get hit in the face with the skateboard.
yes.
What?
I mean, I don't know what to say. It's
So
exactly
here's the thing.
what
I when I say got better, I mean only the most recent episode, which
Okay.
I thought was actually like surprisingly decent, just because like
they finally ended this like weird feud plotline with.
yeah, and like Reki very clearly wins the moral victory of that race. Like, you know, he
rediscovers
is
the fun in skateboarding.
right. He is surrounded by his, even though he loses to Adam in a pretty hackneyed way, he like is surrounded by his friends, the adoration of like the crowd, like people finally recognize his skill, and also he has like come to terms with like I'm here to skate for fun. Like I'm not like doing this to like I don't really care about your like fucking life or death like all or nothing approach to skating. I'm doing this because I love it and it's my favorite thing to do in the world. And so in that regard, I think the latest episode actually works as like okay, like you have gotten around the like pretty unfortunate dismal subplot of the last few episodes where everybody's like, Reki, since you're not the best skater in the world, you should just fucking quit.
Right.
Like, which I thought was like a really like
Because
fucking
you can't win our weird underground downhill skate race ring. If you can't do that, you
What
might as
good
well
are
not
you?
skate at all.
Right, and so
Right.
that's what I mean when I say, yes, the most recent episode got better, but only in comparison to just how fucking low I feel like the last few episodes have been. Just, like, stretching out the Reki Langa fight, like, just leaning more and more into just the Adam insanity. Like, Adam has so much fucking screen time in this show.
Right.
Like, and I just don't fucking care about any of it. Like,
he wasn't even in the first episode, right? Like, didn't he show up later?
He was at the very end of the first episode, I think, in a
Okay.
kind of shadowy
Like,
figure
he's
on the peripheral kind of way.
completely taken over everything about the show. Like,
right, like he's almost the protagonist, right? He's like the tragic protagonist of this show because, like,
Oh yeah, the tragic protagonist who is also up to shady business and government. That's
right. Also, that's shit. You know but what I mean is more like so much of the screen time of the show revolves around him, right? Like, what's Adam doing in the skating world? What's Adam doing in the normal world? What's that cop lady gonna do? Like all these subplots that just don't fucking matter. Like,
yeah.
it's I don't know. Look, I'm not saying that like the show that's 12 episodes of Reki and Langa holding hands while they skateboard and saying increasingly like suggestive homoerotic things to each other is necessarily a better show, but it's probably a more consistent one. Like,
Yeah.
I just want to know what the climax of all this is going to be. Like, is Adam going to go to jail, or is he just gonna recognize that he likes skating after all, and everyone's gonna be like, okay.
I'm gonna call it. They're gonna try to arrest everyone at this weird underground skate ring, and he'll be like, "No, it was all me," because
Oh, and he'll take it for the...
because he's A, rediscovers love of skating, and B, realized how much everyone else loves skating, and so he'll nobly sacrifice himself and show off his political corruption.
And then in prison, he will start a skating team.
Yeah, exactly.
To boost everyone's morale.
Yep.
that's pretty close actually. What I was about to say is yes, like Langa and Adam will skate. Langa will ganbare his way to the top and like show Adam like how to love skating again, and then yes, he will like
Redeem himself
through some hackneyed sacrifice. And I don't know, man. Remember when we thought the show was just going to be about like
Dude,
hot
skateboarding.
teen skating? Yeah.
remember when you guys all wished that there would be something that wasn't just downhill skating,
Yeah, I remember. I'm
and
wishing
you
for
were
that.
slightly hopeful for it. And they're still skating down the exact same hill again.
God, it is the same hill. It is still the same fucking course. Like, what the hell? Like, they couldn't even, like, be half-assed to set up like one half pipe or something. I don't know, man. It's just I sometimes I don't know, like the more I watch this anime, the more I realize I think the actual anime about skateboarding I want is just for somebody to make like an anime based off of like, I don't know if you guys have seen those, that one artist on Twitter whose entire thing is he just draws maids skateboarding.
I've not.
Yeah, I have seen that actually.
Yeah, just like it's the specific juxtaposition of like anime style maids and dresses, except they're all doing fucking sick flips and shit and skateboards.
Sure.
And
It's
like
a very specific niche, but he's got that covered,
but like looking at that art, I was like, maybe that's actually the version of like a skateboarding anime I would prefer to watch at this point, if just because it would be about the skateboarding.
Yeah.
I don't know, just
All right.
I don't know. Yeah, it's just I can't see the last episode changing that much of our opinions on this show. So
Maybe in the final episode, Cherry and Joe will finally resolve their burning sexual tension that they've been building up over the course of the series.
God.
Because the two main characters have absolutely nothing on those two.
Yeah, it's true.
I mean, would you say? I mean, you've all watched the whole thing. Would you say it's still an overall net positive experience? Or
why not?
I
would say go ahead.
It's a generally well-made show. How about that?
Yeah.
Like, the skateboarding generally looks great. Like, the latest episode, I'll admit, maybe similar to Jujutsu Kaisen, I was just wowed by the cool skating. Like,
Right.
Reki,
that's all you
he
need.
hit that big-ass ramp. He hit the hell out of that big-ass ramp.
Yeah.
I would say the show is not overall good, but I have been overall amused.
Okay. I mean, is it just like, should we just accept this as a 7 out of 10 show or something like that?
It's a 7 might be a
6 out of
bit
10.
much. I'll give it a solid 6.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's wrap things up with Wonder Egg Priority.
Well, what about this show? Can you give this show an objective numerical score?
Okay, well, first of all, this got me so worked up that I actually ended up writing about it with along with Zig. So I would encourage everyone to check out our Zig's episode 11 post, as we were both sharing our extensive thoughts on that. It's one of the longest written posts we've had in a long time. I'm actually a little tired of talking about Wonder Egg Priority at this point, but I would just say, to start, starting around like episode 8, they did have a recap episode, and this is the third and final Cloverworks show on this list that has been notoriously having production issues.
Yeah.
Although it still looks pretty good. It might not as good as some of the earlier episodes, but they did have to take an episode off.
Yeah.
So there is one more episode. We're in a very weird spot because we're recording on Sunday. The episode comes out Tuesday, but this will probably go up on Wednesday.
Oh yeah.
So we're going to be talking
For all
about
I know, we're all gonna have egg on our face.
Yeah. Oh, pun intended, right? But
Heyo.
So any speculation we're doing now, if you're a fan of the show, you may already know what happened by the time you're listening to this, is what I'm saying. But overall, after the recap episode in 8, from the last 3 episodes, they've kind of shifted the focus toward the overall meta plot of where this whole system comes from and whatnot. And while there were some pretty strong moments, I think like everyone's going to point to episode 10 with Momoe's, saying trans rights and whatnot. But I don't know. I just feel like whatever they're setting up, first of all, especially in the last episode 11, which is like the second to last episode, I will remind everyone, they like completely drop these huge plot bombs that I don't feel they will have anywhere near as much time to turn into anything. And my single biggest concern going into the last episode is they've sort of set it up to say that all of these girls,
so, like,
despite their problems, got basically pushed over the edge into suicide through some magical anime reason.
Yeah.
And not
a fan.
Yeah, and it remains to be seen whether or not they're going to stick with that concept in the last episode or kind of flip it over and say that's not really what happened. But I'm leaning toward that's.
I don't know why
what they're going with.
Introduce these plot ideas if you aren't going to follow up on them in the last episode, I guess.
And I don't generally like to bring these factors into it, but I've always been giving the show a bit of side eye with all the interviews and things that have come out with the author. And we talked about a couple weeks ago about the statements he made in episode, or the statements they made literally in the show in episode, I think 3 it was, the controversial statements, so that were basically the men are from Mars, women are from Venus statements and all that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And even after the director kind of downplayed that, the writer in another interview was like, yeah, that was the whole point of inspiring me to write this story. So like, I feel like either there's been some kind of conflict on what the message of this show is supposed to be, or like they just don't know how to express what they're trying to say.
Yeah,
I just don't know what the like end game is supposed to be.
It's interesting because I didn't read. I kind of skimmed like after the fact the interviews, but I didn't. I guess I didn't really want to read them until I'd watched the show, and then I could go back. But it does feel, in light of episode 11, to me, that it was almost like another show, like a different show.
Yeah.
Like in terms of how that went down, like it was still a show I would have potentially watched, but it wasn't the show I had been watching up until that point.
Yeah, it's a huge shift for sure, and I have to wonder how much internal conflict may have been happening as to what the show was going to be about and what the plot was going to be, and I don't know, it just feels a lot more messy than it needs to be with all that. And if they're really going with this whole idea, well, it was actually Magic Anime Machine that made these girls kill themselves, like, I feel like that would be a very
then I think, like, I during the entire show so far, I've already been kind of skeptical on how it's handled all of that, specifically like because it's consistently portraying like really terrible things happening to all of these girls who are killing themselves, and so like to then introduce this magic element of like this ghost in the machine cause them to kill themselves. It's like, why did you spend so much time like stabbing us and twisting the knife repeatedly? Like, what are you trying to say at that point?
Yeah, I kind of wrote when I was writing about that, I kind of put it as like, yeah, I mean, it's basically like, why did we build up to all that, and also just like it makes it like the what they went through should have been
totally
fine and manageable.
Yeah,
they should have totally been able to handle it on their own, but because this external magical force, and it's like, that's not a great look, whether that was intended or not. And I don't think they will overturn that. I think they still could. I think there's still ways to. My like ideal scenario would be they kind of flip the script and show that the two tech bro guys that caused all this like have no idea what they're talking about when it comes to how young women think and act and all that. But I don't think they're going to go for that big of a table flip.
Right.
And then if they do, to successfully pull it off in 20
in
more
one
minutes.
episode. Yeah. Which I'll point out, we have a lot of threads still open. Like when we ended episode 10, we had the whole thing with I and creepy teacher guy going, which does not get mentioned in episode 11 at all.
Right.
That's still got to get tied up.
Whole business.
Yeah.
Also.
Whatever's happening with Nehru, which my theory is she's probably another AI or something, but that's, again, it'll be hilarious to be listening to this after the final episode, I'm sure. But my theory is she's another AI and Frill is her quote unquote sister that she was talking about, but
I was wondering that too, but
if you look at the like the bad sketches that the Aka and Uraka draw, like they kind of slightly match up with Nehru and Frill, but whether what that means plot wise, I don't know. That's my theory on it.
I'm really looking forward to the final episode just to see like how
like, crazy
on
fight.
earth this is gonna turn out, but I'm not necessarily optimistic about it. Even though I have really been enjoying the show up until now, and I'm not saying episode 11 was bad either.
Yeah.
On its own. It's just that as part of this whole, it feels very incongruous.
Didn't match up with
at all. Yeah.
Like that felt like it should have been like maybe like the mid-season twist if you're going to go that far. And then maybe you can then reconcile what happened with what we've been seeing so far.
Maybe, yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. And yeah, it just even just overall, I feel like they took like a darker turn over the last couple episodes too. But I just, if we're gonna go back to the number score, for me, Wonder Egg feels like an 8 out of 10 show that should have been a 10 out of 10 show. Is maybe where I'm gonna end up in the final.
If the last episode can do its thing and I still give it an 8, I will be pleasantly surprised.
That might be the best case scenario.
I just don't see a path forward for it, like
I agree, Iro. Like, I don't know if anything in the last episode is going to significantly change my mind at this point. Well, I take that back. It could be a lot worse. I don't know if anything's going to make it a lot better. What happens in the last episode could make it a lot worse. So, maybe there's not as much upside for me going to the last episode. But, yeah, I don't know. I just feel like there's so much... there's so much they could have worked with in making this, like, a real powerful, emotionally compelling anime.
Right.
And, like, at the end of the day, I just, like... I don't feel like I care as much as I do. Like, any of the emotional responses I've gotten out of it have been more out of maybe the shock value of some of the things that happened in the last episodes.
Less would have been more
I think
in a
that
lot of
has
cases.
been the problem I've had with the show this, like, the entire run, is that I've never been compelled by I've never been, like, emotionally compelled by, like, the plot's happening, but I've been emotionally affected by just, like, the rawness of what's occurring, and I don't know if that's good.
Right. And I guess my thing is, like, if you're gonna bring up the things that they're bringing up in the graphic way that they are bringing up, you better have a reason to do it.
You are dropping emotional bombs every episode, and I'm asking why, and the show has not given me an answer.
There needs to be a payoff, and it needs to be cathartic enough that it was genuinely worth it.
But, like, I don't know how you pay off on showing for 10 episodes straight, like, young girls being abused and killing themselves. Like, what's the follow-up? And I don't know.
Right. I mean, you can do those things to, like, bring awareness to issues and things like that, but, like, I don't feel like they've been concise enough in addressing that.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of just, here it is for the sake of having a story or something. But...
On the plus side, I don't think it's ever veered into kind of exploitative, but...
it's towing the line, I think.
I agree. Yeah. It's come real close.
I don't think it's quite crossed it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is coming very, very close, and there needs to be some kind of conclusion that will satisfy me, in terms of what's been pretty in your face so far,
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like if they did not cross the line, they've come real close on a couple things in the last 2 episodes, particularly with, like, Karu's flashback and all that. But yeah, I just feel like like I said, if you're gonna go that far, you better have a reason, and I don't know.
Better be a fucking good one.
I don't know if they have one. So
and I don't want a final episode packed with psychological horror,
Yeah. so getting to the final episode, I have no clue what's going to happen at this
Right,
point
yeah,
because
none at all.
they could go any, this whole thing could be a dream and everyone just happy eating cake at the end, or everyone will die violently and have to eat each other or something. I mean, we've already had that, right? So, who knows? I don't see the last episode making any. Go ahead, Ira.
Yeah.
I just don't see it having enough time.
My really like cynical prediction for last episode is they have a rip-roaring fight scene against, like Mind Demon Frill or whatever, and then they come back to reality and have to deal with all that stuff, and I is like, well, I might have to deal with my weird new dad being a creep, and we might have to deal with all this stuff, but now we won't kill ourselves because we killed the evil mind demon.
Oh God!
Like, that's my
Please
cynical.
no.
That's like my really cynical.
I mean, that could
version
totally
of
be
this,
what
right?
happens.
Like,
that could totally be what
like
happens.
now
I
we
wouldn't
have
be-
the
I wouldn't-
strength to carry on through
I
all
wouldn't
this
be.
hell.
I wouldn't be shocked, but I would not like it.
Yeah. Well, I feel kind of bad because Zig and Aqua are not here to defend themselves on
yes.
this one because they are a lot more positive still on it than we are probably, but and I feel like there is still value to the show.
Yes.
It's
For
just
sure.
there's no way at this point it's going to live up to its potential for me because, like I said, I feel like this could have been a 10 out of 10 show.
Okay, what if? Hear me out. What if at the end of the final episode, there's a to be continued in season 2?
Oh, I don't know about this.
Oh, I don't know. What there's a to be continued, and then they never actually make season 2.
What is
You
panty
mean
and
pulling the old panty and stocking?
Yeah, they pull a
I
panty
hear.
and stocking, and there's never actually a season 2. So whatever
What if,
we imagine in our
Butt
whatever we
Rock-
imagine in our mind is better than what would have
What
happened.
if Butt Rock starts playing and they all go get crazy faces and start killing demons? With Sung Hoo Park directing.
Or there's a time skip, and then 10 years later, we get a montage.
Announcing at the end of the last episode, rebuild of Wonder Egg Priority. Movie 1.
All right.
Anything but a montage, please.
I think we better cut this off now.
Well, yeah. I think again, just to as you alluded to, Joe. I think if people are still on the fence about the show or want to hear a different take on it, definitely check out
yes.
posts that Zig has been writing.
He's been doing
So yeah, we get
wonderful
more
coverage so
and
far.
we get a lot more in depth on some of those concepts on the post. So definitely go check that out. And I'm sure we will have some kind of final impressions or something after
Yeah.
the last episode. All right.
Yeah.
So that's gonna tie a bow on winter 2021.
Once more into the breach.
We've already got My Hero Academia already aired, right?
Yep, we have literally already started watching anime from the new season.
No, there's no break. Literally no break. It's overlapping at this point.
Yeah.
So, keep your eye out on the blog. We were just discussing divvying out our season assignments this morning. So you'll be all seeing that soon, and then we'll have our first look podcast next episode. So stay tuned for that. All right. So that's going to do it. You can keep an eye on all those first looks at theglorioblog.com, as well as, what our writing on Wonder Egg, if you're interested in that. Yeah, you can follow us on Twitter at theglorioblog. You can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Amazon Music, Podbean, Stitcher, and YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell, all that. Tell your friends, tell your enemies, and we'll catch everybody next time.